Welcome back to another episode of Network and Chill. I am your co-host Red, joined by my co-host and co-founder Rick. What's going on, brother? It's been a
Hey.
while. We got the opportunity to connect last week and build some community at the PGA Championship. How things been feeling your way, brother?
Oh man, it was amazing to get out there. Beautiful day. Like I said, I tore my Achilles 6 weeks ago, but I was still able to get out and enjoy and share some time with the bros out at the course. Man, it was an awesome experience.
It was, man. It's I think we always talk about networking and putting ourselves in great new environments. And I love the game of golf, so it was great for the city. 2 weeks after the Derby, just a lot of great for the city of Louisville and tourism, but also just great to connect and build relationships with a lot of unique and different people from outside the area as well. So huge for the city.
Yeah, man. I'm excited, not only for, that event and, being there and seeing like how many people came out. Like I didn't expect it to be that,
It
packed. So,
looked like Churchill
hopefully,
Downs, didn't it?
yeah, it was crazy, man. But I mean, hopefully, with everything that even happened, as a result of, the event, that we'll be able to bring back, another big event kind of similar in the future.
Yeah, and I think you talking about events. I think we're very close to announcing some huge events for the rest of this year, in Louisville, maybe outside of Louisville as well, in the state of Kentucky. So stay tuned for some detailed event calendars coming out. National speakers come to the city again. You'll see some save the dates, and it's going to be pretty big and impactful. I'm excited we continue to get to do the work and build relationships and spread the message.
Yeah, man. Making moves, baby. You know how we do.
All right. Well, the moment is here. We have a great guest today, and outside the ecosystem in Atlanta, downtown Atlanta, Georgia, close to Ricky and close to Rick. So I'm gonna let him do the introduction. But you're just talking about entrepreneurship and different journeys, and really going from that hustler to that entrepreneur mindset. We're gonna have a great conversation today. So Rick, I'll kick it to you. As introduce our speaker today.
Yeah, I mean, as Chris said, I mean, our speaker today is someone that's special to me. My uncle, someone that's not only been, inspiring to me as a leader, and visionary, but also, has been a tremendous influence on my journey as an entrepreneur and family man. Antwon Alsobrook is the founder of A2D and eCommunity, organizations that are making a significant impact in bridging the gap of the digital divide and promoting digital inclusion in underserved communities. His dedication to ensuring everyone has access to essential digital resources is both remarkable and inspiring. Today, we'll explore his journey, the challenges he's overcome, and his vision for more connected futures. Uncle Antwon, it's an honor to have you here today with us, bro. What's up?
Thank you for bringing me on, Ricky. Thank you, meeting for the first time in Red. Thank you for bringing me up.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you today. It's first time I get to interact with you, but I've been hearing a lot about you in your past through Ricky and our relationships. So, one thing I would like to start the conversation off is take us back to the beginning. Take us through your entrepreneurial journey, and maybe that pivotal moment, that shifted you from hustling and doing the things and really diving deep into entrepreneurship, and then we can get into like what you do from day to day as well.
Got you. So, um, the world of entrepreneurship was something that I saw early on. In that, from Atlanta, I grew up on the east side of Atlanta. We're called Decatur, where a lot of rappers say, the deck. Grew up, of course, in I'm a '70s baby, so I'm that early Gen Xer. So we saw a lot of the rise of the crack epidemic comes in, and all those different aspects of the South. So of course, although my parents are still together, been together for over almost 50 years now, we were adjacent to all of the activity. So everything you could think about from crime and all that stuff, I was directly, involved. So it was always that situation where I had one foot in trying to do better, one foot, in the streets trying to figure out. And of course, with that, you get as a youth, especially a Black youth, you get pulled into it. And of course, coming out of high school, which I barely did, I was one of those situations where I was in football. I got injured in my 11th grade year, messing up my Achilles heel. And that took away, of course, being able to play football because I was a big guy. And of course, depression kicked in. And of course, when depression kicked in, now you want, you against the world, and you just couldn't find your place. So I found myself gravitating, to the streets and, just trying to build a rep that way, and versus just, diving into, education. So by the time I graduated from high school, I was able to go on to community college. But again, I was so, caught up in the life. Let's just, get example. I took my entrance exam to the community college. And because I was, high on drugs, of course, smoking weed and so forth, I wound up failing the math portion. So imagine now you're already got depression and you're having to take math at remedial level, which is basically learn how to count. And, here I am trying to, better myself, but I had to basically start all over from scratch and try to build from that point. But still having both one foot in the streets, one foot, in education, I found myself, in 95 facing a, amount of time that would have put me away for a long time with felonies. But I was very fortunate that, God blessed me to get me out of that situation. I was able to get myself turned back around and was able to land a job at the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, which completely changed my environment, where no longer I was dealing with a bad element, but I was able to see the future. And from that point, I was able to start saying, okay, let me take school serious. Let me go back in. Let me start looking at something from drawing, because I always like to draw. I wanted to be a car designer. So I went and took up drafting. And for drafting, was able to start taking engineering, went to engineering school at Southern Tech, and really started, opening up and said, okay, I want to go out of this world of utility infrastructure engineering, and was able to really start pushing forward. But of course, when you're in school, you're in college, you're trying to do engineering, you're trying to figure yourself out, you hit a brick wall real quick, you hit that glass ceiling real quickly, and started realizing that, hey, look, the only way that I'm going to be able to excel is either I'm going to have to, go into like entertainment, medical, or some type of industry, or I'm going to have to go into entrepreneurship. But because I'm not a flashy guy, I'm more of a, background kind of person, that was the entertainment side was not going to work. So okay, let me go try the entrepreneurship route. And that kicked off a long journey of entrepreneurship where it was more of a situation of desperation. It was, I did not want to wait for 30 years to work in corporate America just to get some form of pension and then have to figure it out. I wanted to try to cut against the grain. And of course, that's where the journey began. So that's kind of a lead up to that. There's a whole lot of stuff I left off the table. Trying to compact it in, but if you want to ask any more questions, I can go all the way back in.
Yeah, I definitely want to double tap on what you said, man. When you talk about going from hustler to business owner, changing your environment. So you talked about that was your real transition, was when you left after you beat the charge basically, and made it over to working at the Chamber of Commerce, where you were able to meet those different people. So could you talk more about that that network that you built there, what you saw at the Chamber of Commerce that made you decide to change your mindset and act towards becoming more of that entrepreneur, that even leaning towards that mindset?
Yeah, sure. So keep in mind, just like a lot of Black youth, your world consists of maybe a 5-mile radius. The neighborhood you grew up in, that's all you know. So everything that's involved with that's all you see, other than what you see on TV. Back then we didn't have the internet, we didn't have Instagram. It was all, our idea of success was either the drug dealer or the principal at school, or, we occasionally go to a mall, you see a better family. So we had no understanding of what a life would be that's beyond just our specific ecosystem. So while I was came from a decent family, everybody around me was all on the negative side. It was just hustling, just trying to figure out, how I'm literally going to eat. How am I really going to pay the bills? And, and when you're making enough money, doing the honest work, so you had to do extracurricular activity. So that kept you kind of trapped. Well, once I found myself in a position, I'm a spiritual guy. I was like, hey, God, you get me out of this. You got me. That very next day, I was able to get a job at the Atlanta Chamber, being in the mailroom. Now I go from being in this caustic environment to now I'm in an environment where you have who's who of Atlanta, from the Black entrepreneurs, the executive leaders, all coming there to do meetings where I'm having to set up. So now I'm setting up tables and I'm seeing, the owner of H.J. Russell. I'm seeing, the executives of Coca-Cola, and I'm seeing how they maneuver. I'm seeing how they act. I see how they're engaging with each other. I'm seeing how they're pulling up. I'm seeing, their families. And so I'm getting a whole nother perspective of what life can be versus just this small ecosystem of just, drugs and all this other negative stuff. I was able to, for the first time, see that. But of course, now in order to engage, I had to check my own personality. I still had a chip on my shoulder. So I couldn't, I would walk around in the chamber with this mean mug face. I'm already a big guy. You see this line right here was a permanent like this all the time. And people were scared to engage with me because I just had this chip on my shoulder. And I had to soften it up. I had to learn how to engage. I had to learn how to brighten up. And I had to learn how to understand different perspectives. And through that process, a world opened up to me. It's like, okay, there is more to live for. It isn't just trying to, meet and understand that small world. It's a bigger world here. Now I have to figure out what characteristics work. I also had to deal with the whole adage of, one way people try to keep you caught up in their small world is for especially blacks is, hey, you're trying to act white. Well, I had to learn immediately that no race owns good behavior. No race owns, proper things. It's like, hey, these are good actions. These are negative actions. I have to figure out which ones work for me and then stand in my truth. And as I did this, I was able to start rejecting those who I grew up with. And I literally had to just walk away from them because they want to keep you in their crabs and back. So I had to learn how to walk alone and be able to continue to excel.
Yeah.
You giving me chills right now because you're teaching a master class right now. Like it's like, I mean, from the moment your breakdown of like, I think many times we take for granted our environment and how blessed we are. Because everyone, sometimes you're not privy to these environments, and like you said, representation. You only see so much, and so we realize everybody does not have the same opportunities. And so recognizing your environment, and then from there, sometimes like I mean, I can tap into the spiritual, like, like I'm with you on that. Like sometimes like I don't know the answer, but asking God for guidance. And then when you get the guidance, you get the opportunity to be around and see how things should be, see the good side of things, seeing motivation and inspiration through other families and other networks, but also like realizing having the self-awareness of like you still carrying that chip on your shoulder, right? Still carrying the negative from your neighborhood, right? And um, saying that I want to be different, want to grow. And so you like during that time frame, you mentioned like softening up, getting some of those characteristics to be build relationships, right? And be more receiving. Was it somebody during that time frame that helped you with those characteristics? How did you soften up? How did you change that? For somebody out there right now that's going through the same thing, how did you soften up? How did you start networking with those people you were dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
Well, number one, I had to learn what plagues a lot of Black men, and that's the fear of weakness. We're constantly under bombardment of the world and each other that we're feeling under attack all the time. So to try to go against that, you're fighting with yourself, and then I don't want to be weak. I don't want to appear weak. I don't want you to at any way think you could take advantage of me. And that builds that chip on your shoulder. You so much even look at me the wrong way, I gotta instantly come back at you. And that's that fear, because a lot of us grew up without a father to give us that masculine undertone of understanding. You can stand your ground without having to do all that stuff. So we had to learn how to, operate as if we're wolves in these streets. It's like back in the day, there was a song by a rapper by the name of E40, which says that, hey, I carry a mirror in my pocket so I can practice looking hard. That's that warrior look. I'm amongst wolves. I got to look like a warrior. And of course, now the way you speak, the way you walk, your engagement is all trying to deal with that deep-seated fear of, I don't want to be alone. That deep-seated fear, I don't want anybody to not understand me. That deep-seated fear, I'm not good enough, or I wasn't loved. And that translates into a level of anger and aggression. So the first thing I had to do is understand where that came from. And then I had to learn how to deal with that first, and then begin the process of softening up. Now, of course, this is a lifelong battle, because once you have been scarred like that, you got to continuously work on it. It's like, once you've been hurt, you're going to always remember that, but you got to remember that, hey, there's certain situations you got to be able to tone that down.
Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. So let's continue to walk through the journey. So from the mailroom to A2D. So what experiences and opportunities kind of happened in between there that showed you, well, there was opportunity to start a business, and what was your inspiration to, start that business in the beginning?
Okay. So mailroom, I was there from 96 to about 98. I had a chance I had gone to Southern Tech for engineering. One of my good friends, he was there. He was like, hey, let's, at the time I was staying in a dorm, and he was like, hey, I want to get an apartment. Do you want to come room with me? I was like, sure. It's like, I got a job. I'm working at an engineering firm, getting ready to graduate soon. If I get you a job on that, hey, can you come room with me? Because, I want to make sure you got a good job in order to pay your side rent. I was like, fine. So he got me on with the engineering firm. So I was at the chamber. I went there while I was going to Southern Tech for engineering. Well, while I was there and I finally get the job, he decides that, hey, look, I met this young girl. I'm about to get married. You got to go figure it out. so now I'm sitting here like, okay, I left the chamber. I left all his contacts. I'm now working for this engineering firm, and he's getting ready to graduate and leave to go to Bell South. But because I was there, it was a small firm, I was able to work directly with the president, which was the old white guy. And he taught me everything I need to know about, how to deal with business, how to deal with innovation, the whole nine. I was basically just, providing support for him and the design team. So I learned everything from an engineering as far as the design concept, going out to do the construction, taking a concept from, beginning all the way to the end. One particular project was, back then, this is like 98. So we're working on, Windows 98, the graphics card was about, 64 colors, that kind of stuff. But I was learning how to do 3D animation and design using Macromedia, Flash, all that stuff. That's how far back we go here. So HTML, learning all those extra things in order for us to automate training manuals for Kimberly-Clark Corporation, because they were spending a ton of money sending their people from West Coast over to the East Coast to learn how to train on this stuff. So I took on the project, figured it out, created a program, and was able to present it on behalf of the company to Kimberly-Clark. And that was the first time I was able to take something all the way through and present it to a major board. Well, we wind up getting the deal, multi-million-dollar deal, but then I was thinking that, hey, I'm going to get a raise. Now, mind you, I had gotten married. We're now looking at getting a house. I'm banking that I'm now going to go from making $11 an hour at least $25, $30 an hour. And because we just landed this big project, and I got a 50-cent raise. So I knew then, I was like, okay. I get it now. I was able to see for the first time how people work and put in their blood, sweat. But if they don't have equity, they don't have ownership, it doesn't mean anything. So I left there, and I was able to get a job for a large engineering firm by the name of C.H. Hill, and learned about larger $100+ million infrastructure design. And instead of just being a cog in the wheel, I would go there early and sit there and go through a lot of their RFPs, understand how they did business, understand how they did their cost coding, understanding how they did marketing, and document all that stuff. Because I knew one day I was going to have to do business because I can't continue to be chasing projects. So that's how I started at fundamental, because I got burned with a small engineering firm. Now with a big firm, let me learn everything. Like, how do they do, set up their proposals? How do they do it font? How do they do it with logos? So if you think about it, the company CH2M Hill, each letter is part of the founders. Well, if you look at A to D, what is it? Antwon Alsobrook Design. So the A squared D, which my wife did the logo, because the name with CH2M Hill, you have to define it for the customer. The customer don't define it. Mm-hmm. So I learned those little small things to understand how to deal with branding, how to deal with creating yourself a niche. How are you supposed to put everything together? Learned all that stuff. Then about, 2002, ran into a guy. I had a design concept for, back then they had a Palm Pilot, and I had an idea about doing a concession ordering network over a wireless network to allow people in stadiums to order their concessions, almost like an Uber for concessions, and needed someone to understand networks. Ran into a guy who had a network company down in Noonan, Georgia, about 45 minutes from Atlanta. And I said, hey, I need help. He was like, hey, if you want to understand about technology and telecom, you got to come to my office. And I was like, okay, bet. So every morning I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go to work on the top end of Perimeter, get off at 3, drive 45 minutes south to his office, sat there and learned everything I can, went back home, did this every day for 3 years straight, just to understand business. So if you I learned about small engineering, went to a large engineering firm, understood how they did business, and then went to a technology firm and understood how, all the different aspects of how to get together. And that gave me the spirit of what, being able to do entrepreneurship. Right. So eventually I stepped on my own in 2005, where CH2M Hill was undergoing a layoff because it was the precursor to the 2008 housing crash, because the big engineering firms started losing money first because the big projects was drying up, and I was able to make my exit and start my business then.
Okay, before we get into you starting that business, it's a lot of things I don't want to, just skip over, right? Because literally, you're just talking about.
It's a lot.
You're essentially talking about, taking the hand you were dealt and making the best of it. I mean, you're in these situations where maybe you didn't have a seat at the table. You weren't even there for a certain purpose, and you were able to build a relationship and then get yourself and learn and adapt and continue to build and iterate. In everything I'm hearing, right? And taking those learnings and having grit, desire, determination to continue to say, let me learn these things, right?
You said a lot with that.
Yeah, and
I can tell you.
Curious. I'm kind of curious, like, because I think everything you're talking about, you have to be in situations where you are a likable person, right? Like, how are you getting these connections and showcasing that, almost like people gave you trust and respect and the opportunity?
Well, the difference between me and a lot of people today, I understood that nobody owes me anything. My most valuable asset is my time. So I had to be willing to give someone my time out the gate. And all of my talents, I'm bringing and proving to you. Full stop. So you take, for example, the guy in Noonan. I told him, I don't want a dime from you. Just allow me to be in the room. Any project you got, anything you're working on, let me work on it. I'll do it. Because that's invaluable information. That's invaluable lessons. Everybody wants to get paid to do internships. It's like, well, how in the world are you going to learn if you're not in the room? You got to be in the room. And sometimes you just can't work things out from a payroll and all that stuff. It's just, hey, come and be in the room. I can't tell you how many times I've met a young man or a young woman say, hey, look, come on up to the office. I got a meeting with this politician or this multi-million-dollar company. Just come. You can just sit in the conference room to be in there. Wouldn't show up.
Don't show up.
You see what I'm saying? But that was extended to me. And I would just show up wherever. Hey, I'm willing to go. If I got to, drive down in my car with no air conditioning, I don't care. I was willing to do it because you got to understand, growing up where I did, all you saw was the drug dealers, the pimps, and, the prostitutes and somebody who works for the sanitation department. That's all you saw. You mean to tell me I get to go in a room with a CEO, with a technology person, and just to understand that world? Where do I sign up? And that's that level of aggression to understand, to get those little pieces. People start seeing, oh, this guy really has a thirst for knowledge. And then you take in the fact that I was able to really understand my true talent, which is I can take an idea and break it down to the smallest component and then rebuild it back up. People said, oh, okay, so I can give you this. You can break that down, repackage it, and re-put it back in play. Oh, what else you want to work on? And that's how it turns together.
Man, Chris and I always talk about having that give first mentality. Like you said, people always come in talking about how can I get paid? But if you can go in and show your talents and skills and be valuable by giving first, then it turns into way more than what you probably expected in the beginning, because you were able to not only soak up the knowledge, but show off your skill and expertise, and then you can bring value to the team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I live by a philosophy in that, I wanted to get to a point where I'm able to do one of three things. A, make an investment. B, hire. Or C, make an introduction. Those are my three givebacks. Of course, make an investment, you got to be able to, stand up to the transaction requirement. So you got to have your ducks in a row. Everything got to be where it needs to be. And I got to be able to give it to accounting and legal to make sure it is what it is. Being able to hire. Of course, you got to be able to show me that you're willing to do the grunt work. I would never give anybody anything that I'm not willing to do or have done. And then make the introduction. I gotta be assured that you have the proper character and spirit. But if all three of those there you go. So I'm a very transparent person because nobody had to give me anything. I was there. I'm the first to get there. I'm the last to leave.
You're dropping some gems there. So let's continue on then. So give us that moment of you leaving and going out on your own. Talk us through this first couple of years and really the trajectory you've grown since you started on as an entrepreneur.
All right. So where A2D come from? So I was working with the entrepreneur down in Newton. One of the things that he had was he had a contract with municipalities doing hybrid fiber coaxial networks, helping them they were electrical companies. They wanted to get into the ISP, internet service provider, and he would do consulting, engineering, network design for them. So I would come in, of course, because I had a CAD engineering, utility infrastructure capability. I would come in and say, hey, look, just give me the designs and let me draw your plans up for you. Let me, start speccing out the infrastructure. So in doing that, I learned how to do fiber network, hybrid coaxial network design, because it was similar to what I was doing for the utilities. So a water line, a pump, a valve was no different than a fiber line, a switch, and a router. It was the same type of terminology, as far as I'm standpoint on a piece of paper. The biggest difference that I saw in doing that is for the utilities, the water line, I have to go get my professional engineering license to stamp it. In telecom, I didn't need any of that. I was like, oh, hold on one second. You mean to tell me I could make just as much an hour doing telecom that I could do in utilities, and I don't have to go 8 years to get a degree to do the same thing. So I was like, okay, let me dive a little bit more deeper in this. So I started going on different projects. Now, mind you, I'm still working at CSUM Hill, and I'm coming down to Noonan every day, trying to understand all this stuff. And I sat down one day and I started looking at some of the financial projections of one of the municipalities. And what I realized was they're spending, they just built out a network. This is like I said, early 2000s. They built out a head-end coaxial network, all that stuff to compete against the local phone and cable company. But in looking at the infrastructure cost, they're spending $4 million in the head-end just to generate the service, but they only spent $1.5 million on the infrastructure. So that means that their entire budget for the service to compete against the local telephone company where you had a finite customer base, there's no way they were going to get a return on investment. So I told them, hey, look, you put 1.5 in the infrastructure. Why don't you build out the infrastructure? Don't do the head end, and you lease the infrastructure to the cable company. They're like, no, we want to be the service provider. I was like, okay, that's not going to turn out well. So I said, okay, well, what if I did this with a real estate developer? What if I built a business case where I can now come into a real estate developer who basically is building like a little mini city, like a campus, infrastructure. Say, hey, I'll put in this infrastructure, and then I'll get the cable or the phone company to plug in at the front of it, and I will charge them a fee for their telecom to come to your home, and I'll share it with you. So I started running the numbers. I was like, oh, this kind of makes sense. The developer already got a budget. He's putting in infrastructure. And he's just giving it away to the electric company, giving it away over to the gas company, giving it away over to the telecom company. What if I can get him to give me a portion of it, get a crew, we install it, and then create a special purpose LLC, and then I get the carriers to come across it. Mm-hmm. So I started running numbers. I was like, oh, this is something here. And I started realizing, like, hey, there's an opportunity to take what I designed, turn it into a revenue producing asset. So I was able to tweak it on the model. And then at that time, that's when C.H. Schumann Hill went away, and I started going after my own business, trying that. So I started going after different developers. By 2007, landed my first developer. We start building a fiber network here in Atlanta off Camp Creek, the first open access fiber to the home network. Now, mind you, this is 2007. We delivered 100 meg connection to the prem. In 2007, fiber to the home. The townhomes had structured cable, smart, everything came to one box, smart lights, hold-off audio, the whole nine. And we had built a special purpose LLC where the developer co-owned it with us, and we had Comcast and we had AT&T connected in what I call a teletoll, and I was literally charging them a fee to deliver services to the home. So they would charge, let's say, $50 a month. They pay me $15 a month. Because I realized this is the design, this is the infrastructure. They got to get it. If I'm able to partner with a developer, they can't go around me. So I'm effectively in between the customer and the carrier.
Yep.
All right.
So at that point, I was like, okay, let me keep this going. Was able to go now start presenting that model, brought out developers such as H.J. Russell, Integral Group, brought them out to Camp Creek Village. They were able to see it, and I had contracts lined up by end of 2008. I had probably about $5 million worth of contracts lined up for developments throughout the city. Then 2009 happened, housing crash. All of the developers either got foreclosed on, or their projects got indefinitely put on hold. At that moment, yeah.
I got a question. I got a question before, because you're talking about now kind of overcoming some failure, having some big success, and then going to the failure piece and coming back. But from that first customer, how long was it before you got that first customer, the first pilot customer to get that buy-in before you get that $5 million in contracts?
So 2005, got laid off. Okay, I'm doing little technology projects, yada yada, doing some websites and graphics and stuff like that. Landed a customer doing a design build of a nonprofit organization facility. 2006, enough money wasn't coming in. Monica and I, my wife and I, we lost our first house, 2006, January 2006. Okay, had to move into a friends of mine townhome. Still trying to get that project with the nonprofit facility up and running. They ran into financing trouble, couldn't get funded, didn't know why. Kept going, wound up having to leave the townhome, go stay in my mom. So now this is September 2006 at my mom and dad's house with my wife, daughter, she's pregnant with our second daughter, and then my mom get diagnosed with cancer. So you're gonna go over this. I'm unemployed, my wife unemployed, and my project still ain't come through. All right. December 2006, they finally got funding. We started design, was able to move out in the following June. Got us a house, my daughter there. Everything started going well. At that point, now I had that project going. I was able to focus in on the telecom side while that was happening and start shopping around. Was able to then get my first development client in 2007, early 2007. Got the deposit in about March of 2007. Got the network up and running about November 2007. So going in 2008, start rocking and rolling. Then they came up with another project to do a hotel. Got that project. Start building out the hotel. Now I got a hotel. We're building fiber to the suite, as well as the mixed-use development, commercial townhomes and houses doing that fiber. Now I got two projects to show bigger clients, bigger developers. So now in 2008, that's operating. I'm showing different clients. When 2009 happened, everything shuts down. So it was a going through financial struggle. I had to keep the faith because, again, I can't go back to corporate America because my engineering aspect, all that done. Nobody's hiring because none of the projects being financed. So you got no choice. You know, I'm too far in.
That's exactly the question I was going to ask you, because you talk about all the, the financial, losing your home, the personal, and many times, you talk about mental health. Like, I was wondering, like, coming from your history and your background, like what kept you in a positive mind state during that time?
God, every moment that I was about to crack and go back, God would do something. Like, here's an example. 2009, we had lost everything again. All the projects I had went away. I had a bunch of infrastructure couldn't sell. Where now we had lost the house that we were staying in, which was a rental house. It was so bad that the person we were renting from, we were getting foreclosure notices to that house from the person who was renting us the house. And that's how bad it was in 2009. Okay. So we wind up having to leave and had to move in with my sister. She had a mother-in-law suite in the basement of our house. So we moved in with her. So now I got my wife, 3 kids. We live in the basement of my sister. Okay. While I'm going through that, things got real hard and bleak to the point where I started reverting back to old Antwon. And literally one day I was like, enough is enough. Somebody about to get this work. Grabbed the shotgun, walked out the door, was about to go rob somebody. Got to the door. One of my friends was right there with 2 pieces. Just like that. So I was like, okay. Every time I was at that breaking point, God showed up. Hey, keep going. Keep going. So that's the piece. It was one of those things where it's like, hey, if you really truly are doing what your purpose is, God will always give you that little piece like, keep going. Just keep going. Your ego got to be in check. Your fears got to be in check. But you got to keep going, because as long as you're seeing some form of momentum of learning financially, all that hardship can happen, but you got to really hunker down and say, okay, what is it that I truly need, and ask God for that. All that want stuff, that can wait. What do I truly need? I want to make sure my family is at least got covered. They're fed, they're safe, and we're together.
Yeah, man, I think it says something about walking in your purpose and, having a mission when you start out to, do your business or whatever that may be. And that's what, helps you and sees you through. And I think, for me, hearing your story because I think we're about at the point where we met coming up, there in 2010, 2011. And I think hearing your story of how, all the things that you overcome, and then to see you back on the trajectory again, on the way up again. And it was, inspirational just to hear, like you said, I've been at my mom's basement, I've been in my sister's basement, but I stayed with it and kept on going, because I know that I got something. I know that there is opportunity here, and it's going to come. And you keep that faith. I think that has really, like I said, been inspirational, to me. And like I said, to see, you grow that business from 2010 to 2011, from A2D to the eCommunity partnerships, and how you built that. So can you give us just a quick synopsis of how it's gone from, A2D, the 30 employees, there when we met in 2011 to now this, partnership with eCommunity?
Okay. So at the time when I was talking about the situation with the pizza, all right, we were going through the process of trying to present. At the time, they had the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program. So Obama had stimulus to do broadband in underserved areas. So we had a group, we were going after it. So of course, you had a lot of different dynamics happening. So we were brought together by the Minority Business Development Agency to put forward my business case, which is the open access business case, to go after funding. So by the time August of 2010 had gotten here, we were down to our last bit. We presented this multi-state effort, about $300 million to try to do broadband. It wound up getting thrown out. So I had to basically just kind of just pick myself up. I was like, okay, all right, God, I'm 100% all on you. You got it from this point. So from August till March, I don't know how we made it. It was all a blur, but we made it to that point. Got a phone call in February of 2010 by the group and said, hey, we would like to go after this funding again. And I told them, hey, look, if we're going to do it again, I'm leading this time. I'm not going to be behind anybody else. I'm doing it my way. Y'all going to have to hit your train because I know what I'm going to have to do. So I sat down, pulled together a team. We had PhDs from different educational entities, different parts, and we put together this application for funding to do a network in rural Alabama, 8 counties, $59 million grant. Got it submitted in March of 2010. May of 2010, got a notice that, hey, your grant is being reviewed. June of 2010, we go through intense vetting by the federal government. So now I'm up on the phone, every night talking to Bruce Allen, Price Cooper Waterhouse, going through the numbers, that vetting. So all that stuff I went to up to that point prepared me to be able to deal with that type of vetting, to be able to handle that rapid fire of questioning, what's going on, technology and all that stuff. It prepared me for that. Mm-hmm. By September, we got awarded. By January, the following year, we were up and running, had office. We had already gotten up to 30 employees. By July of 2011, had offices in 2 states to 70 employees. Everything was rocking and rolling to 2012 came. 2012, we had a coup happen inside of the partnership of groups, and they wind up basically doing a hostile takeover. And we had to leave that aspect. I had to shut down operations while they went and fought it out. And ultimately, the grant wound up going away, but we were able to survive. Everybody that was in the coup either got kicked out of office or lost their company. We were the only way able to survive all of that. Mm-hmm. Now, I just left a lot of stuff on the table. That's a book and probably a movie by itself, I tell you. But it was very costly, but we was able to make it out there. So that's 2012. 2013 to 2017, did several projects still in the broadband space until we got to 2018, was able to secure a deal with the City of Warner Robins, doing a public-private partnership to build a network, connect all of their government facilities. And from that point, started growing. As of today, we have secured institutional investment. We now have a network in Clayton County, Georgia, which passes, it's about a 100-mile network that passes about 120,000 homes. It's connect all 72 of the schools. So imagine Jefferson County, the network to connect all the schools. We have that equivalent here in Atlanta. And we're now expanding, doing fiber to the home to multiple cities in Clayton County. We also have started construction on a network on the Fort Eisenhower military base, delivering fiber to service members, as well as we're looking at other military bases across the country.
Man, I mean, I'm checking my head right now because you're the definition of entrepreneurship is not a straight line. Okay, I mean, this
Oh
is
no,
a
yeah.
roller coaster, up and down, back and forth type of ride, and it's like it is not only inspirational, but it's like I think the level of grit and self determination to keep pushing through. I think it's a common thread as Ricky and I like meet with other entrepreneurs that like most times you hear the glamorous side, you see where people are at now, but I mean a lot of these stories, like you said, it's probably a book, a movie. You don't get to hear those stories. Um, you kind of talked about the partnerships now and the growth. How big are you now, and how much have you scaled over the last few years?
So what 2012 taught me is I learned the valuable lesson of the I am complex. Have you ever heard somebody say that? What the I am is?
Mm. What's the
All
IM?
right,
Break it down for us.
all right. So Jay-Z has a lyric in the song "Lost Ones," where it says, "The greatest gift known to man is when I look in the mirror and say, there I am." So the I am is when I start seeing myself beyond the humility.
Mm,
I now start referring to myself in the third person. I now believe that I am better than everyone else.
mm,
And you start operating with this level of ego where you think you're above. And of course, all you've done now is just tapped into your flesh where it becomes ever consuming. So everything you're doing is all about trying not to be weak by being the biggest peacock in the room. So everything you're doing, getting employees, relationships, cars, all that stuff is to basically overcome that insecurity that you have. That a lot of times goes back to you were abandoned or you didn't get the love that you probably have, you got overlooked, or some girl broke your heart. Whatever it is, there's some pain of rejection that made you say, I'm not going to deal with that again. And so you create this alternative personality. I did that in 2012. And I had to watch everything I built come to a crashing end. I had to sell off everything. I watched how I went and took on investment and loan for employees. But because I couldn't pay, handle payroll, they all was like, you're out. I'm out. So all of that whole ego came crashing down. And I started realizing, I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again. So we've been able to rebuild up A2D. I got a core group of 3 guys that's been with me since 2010 that are still here. And we now scale as we need to using
mm,
contractors, vendors, and what I call mercenary 1099. Because
mm,
I no longer have to walk in a room and I got a whole horde of people. I don't need that anymore.
mm,
As a matter of fact, when I walk in a room, a lot of people think that my COO, he's the CEO, and I'm like maybe security. Because I mean, I'm
mm,
6'2", I'm a big guy. So a lot of times, and I'm the youngest in the group, so a lot of times people don't even know who I am because I try to keep a very low profile type look. And that's because I've done all that, showing up, at the community members with the luxury car and the suits and a whole, team of beautiful, staff and all that stuff, done all that. And it doesn't mean anything. And now I've gotten it down to, hey, we're able to execute. We're faster than everybody else. We're more intelligent. We're able to implement, and we're able to do it with a level of, covertness that nobody sees us coming. So now we can compete head to head with the largest telecom companies. They don't even know it.
mm, mm.
So right now, as it stands, I got 5 employees. And we've
Mm,
just spent over the past 2 years, we spent maybe about $10 million in infrastructure.
mm.
Talk about
Operating
moving
at a high
lean.
level.
But I think that this is what you learn, when you have to be scrappy, you're forced to be scrappy and make things work. You figure out how to make it work with what you have. And once you figure that sauce out, that's like the definition, I feel like, of almost startup in itself, is figuring out how to move more lean and more scrappy than anyone else, and provide that same, level of service.
Yeah.
Um,
It's all ego. When I tell you, I had to think about when I was at the chamber. I had to think about how a lot of those executives were showing up. I had to really peel back and say, oh, so the people with the real money You couldn't tell. The ones that didn't have the money, oh, you thought they were rich. No. I had to really think about it, and I had to move differently. And I learned how to demonstrate the subtleness of power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the piece that a lot of entrepreneurs miss, because there's one thing that, the reason why I'm able to do this, Red, is, and I think both of you have this. I know at the end of the day, I have a skill that I can fall back on. Mm-hmm. I have a foundation that I can fall back on. At any moment, I can say enough and I can go get me a job. I can go work for a utility. I can go work for, I know at the end of the day, I have enough skill set to go get a job and live a decent 9-to-5 life. But I wasn't put on this earth to do that. So I might as well go all out.
Go all out.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean,
for the entrepreneur listening right now, you're talking about ego, right? And you talked about, just for a second, like going back into the chamber and seeing how wealth moved, right? Like, can you give a couple characteristics that you observed over time, how some of the big money moves right now currently, and how maybe a young entrepreneur, someone getting to the game, should recognize that and take those characteristics, learn from those characteristics like you did.
Big people with resources move with intention. Every decision that they make, down to what they wear, has a purpose. That's the difference. Those who don't understand intention and purpose, they always are trying to figure out how to impress you. You see what I'm saying? It's you see here in Atlanta, there's a lot of people that ride around in luxury cars and they wear designer clothes because it's something I could take with me and show off. Mm-hmm. But your home, only those who I invite in my home get to see how I live. So if you never get invited to my house, you don't know how I really live and what kind of resources I got. Only those I'm doing business with actually gets to come to my office. If you don't have that relationship, you don't know. So only thing that you got is what you see, what kind of watch I got on, what type of clothes I got on, give you an impression. So let's take this in perspective. For the past 5 years, I did a social experiment. Today was the first day that I stopped doing this, believe it or not. For the past 5 years, I've driven, when things went rough 5 years ago, I had a Lexus, I had to sell it off. Ricky knows the way. He helped me go buy from it. I had to go to Louisville again. But I had to sell it and everything in order to just cover payroll and stuff like that. Well, we bought from my sister a 2001 Accord 2-door. Okay, and I'm a big guy, so it's 2-door. So we bought it from her for $1,200. And it was supposed to be when my daughter get her driver's license the following year, she was going to do that and I was going to get another. Well, she never got a driver's license, so I kept driving. So here I am driving to work every day in this gold beat up Honda Accord, going to meetings. And I used to watch people look down on me like I'm just a nobody. Yet I'm driving to my office downtown directly on the internet hub on the 18th floor. But everybody think I'm just some scrub. And I was like, now I get it. Real people move with intention and don't care about what you think, because it's all about how I can execute and how I move. And only people who understand that and can discern that can see the small little subtle details. Like the average person don't know the difference between shoes, for example. The difference between Stacey Adams and, some other, Louis Vuitton. They don't know the difference unless they see a logo. But those who really understand can tell the difference between a Goodyear shoe versus, some plastic sole, because they understand the quality difference. They can see the nuances. So as entrepreneurs, we have to learn how to discern the small, minute details and be able to determine who is the real power player in the room, not the sales guy who's trying to look flashy. We got to be able to say, okay, who's sitting there not speaking as much? Who's the one that's making a little small move to, divert stuff? Those are the different tales that you have to learn how to do. But it all derives back to, like I said from the beginning, if you have a chip on your shoulder, you're trying not to be weak, you're not going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So to be successful, you have to shed all that peacock stuff and be able to stand on your own laurels and stand on who you are and be unapologetic, but also intentional. Every decision you got to be able to stand on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like it boils back down to execution.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day is, no matter what, flash you want to show up with or whatever, is when you get into that game, can you score?
That's it.
And if you're effective at scoring, then, people are going to want you around and bring you in, and business is going to grow.
That's right. That's right. Execution. Business is boring. I don't care what anybody say. It's boring. Why is it boring? Because it's repetition, execution, restart. You make money by being able to execute, keep your operational costs low and your profit revenue high, keeping customers coming back. Simple as that. If you're in the game of trying to get these big pops, onesies and twosies like consultants, you're going to run out of money. So, like I tell people who want to be an entrepreneur, say, let's take a look at it. You just closed on a client for $1 million. What you going to do with that $1 million? Well, number one, you got to deal with taxes. Number two, you got to understand what expenses come with that. And number three, whatever is left over, you got to amateurize over how long it's going to take you to get the next deal. So that $1 million now immediately turns up down to 400,000. That 400,000, now you take out another 200,000, which means you may be lucky to have 200,000 left over. Now it may take you 2 years to come up with the next deal, which means now that 200 divided by 24, that's what you really got. So a lot of people don't think about that. They get that money and then boom, they spend it trying to look like they're successful. And now understand that you've now just put yourself in a trap box. So people have to look at things. Look at it like a barber. Take entrepreneurship like a barber.
I mean, I was going to ask you some gems for young entrepreneurs, but you already gave us a ton. And so as we get ready to kind of close out, I'm thinking through what's next for you? Like, what's the legacy and what's your upcoming vision that you want to leave the world?
So eCommunity is on the verge of being, I can honestly say right now, we have changed the telecom landscape. We've proven that carrier neutral open access networks are viable. Now let me expand to you what that means. We own the network that connects to the home. Okay? That's no different than roads and streets. We own the road and the street and the driveway to your home. We're not FedEx, we're not UPS, we're not the US Postal Service. The internet providers are them. Right now in the world of telecom, UPS builds their own road to your home. FedEx build their own road to your home. United States Postal Service build their own road to your home. We said, no, we'll build the road, maintain it. You just pay us a fee to deliver your packages. That's what we've done for telecom. So, and we've proven that model can work. Right now in Clayton County, we have 3 internet providers competing to deliver services across our network. They're active right now, and they're paying us to deliver their services to the home.
See,
we're the first Black company to do it, and we're the first open access, truly neutral company to do it here in the United States.
Yeah, man. And I was talking about creating competition, and when we talk about pricing and things like that for internet service, like here in Louisville, our only choice for the longest was Spectrum. Like that was the only choice that we had. And then, I think AT&T came along in the late 2010s or early 2010s or whatever. And then you felt like you had a choice, but then only in certain areas. So, and then I think Google came in for a while here and said that they were going to put fiber everywhere. Project lasted for, I think, a year and a half or so. And then that project got shut down. So, I think that this would be a much more viable, way of getting that fiber out there and not doing repetitive work across, companies, AT&T, Spectrum, all, tearing up your yard to get this thing done on the roads. If these were, we talk about internet as a utility, nowadays. So when we are planning cities, we planning for those sewers to go in, like you said, we're planning for that water, to go in. We definitely should be working with, someone like an eCommunity to plan on, that fiber, that internet, service going in at the same time, because it only makes sense because, everyone needs access to the internet.
That's correct. So what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that we treat telecom like a critical path utility. And so we're bringing private to partner with any government resources in order to get that ubiquitous infrastructure in play. Not dark, but actually lit to the prim. Now, because we're not the internet provider, we're able to do something that's completely different in that we can separate what I call retail traffic from community traffic. Let me get a little technical here. So what we're able to do is create multiple VLANs over an optical signal. So I can say, okay, hospital, education, workforce development on VLANs 1, 2, and 3. Internet with carrier A is on VLAN 5. Internet on carrier B is on VLAN 6. Internet for carrier C is on VLAN 7. And I now can control who gets access to what. So imagine you have internet, you're paying for internet, but then you can't pay for it anymore. I can switch you over to the educational network at no charge. I can switch you over to the hospital network. So you're never in a position where you shut off from the things you need, because I own the pipe all the way to the prem.
See, and that changes the game right there. And I think that's something that people don't really understand, about how our internet works now and how we're connected and how much of a value that eCommunity is providing to their customers.
That's correct. So, and then what we're doing for that is like we're standing up a smart city network in the city of Morrow, Georgia, which is just south of the airport, where we're doing not only fiber, but also multiple wireless overlays. So we're doing some LTE, 4G, 5G, some LoRaWAN, some Wi-Fi, all different networks in order to test different types of connectivity, stuff like that from a ubiquitous standpoint versus just getting them out to the internet. So that includes direct connect to Amazon, direct connect to Azure, all those different things in order to test different types of devices to start thinking about what is the total cost benefit to the community, to the homeowners, and so forth. We're also looking at ways that we can partner with entrepreneurs that say, hey, look, I want to test my new product onto the network. Cool, come plug in, stand up your servers, and we can now set up a whole nother VLAN structure on that. So you got new apps and so forth. So we're just opening the door of what you can do from a network standpoint. And then as we start approaching Web3, how do we deal with authentication from a security standpoint, trusted between assets, communications? How do we deal with data packet management, in and out of tagging? All those different things we're now looking at as well in order to make sure that this infrastructure is ready for the next 50 years.
I'm loving all that. You mentioned working with early stage entrepreneurs and a lot of them to use your network and tap into that. How can entrepreneurs connect with you that are either in this area or in Georgia? But how can they connect with you to potentially engage in that opportunity?
Number one, just reach out to me. You guys could definitely put my contact information up. If you're here in Atlanta, just let me know. Invite you over to what I call the Matrix at our office over here at 55 Marietta, which is, just so you understand, 55 and 56 Marietta. All the internet traffic throughout the Southeast flows through these buildings. They're directly connected with all the data centers. So how everything needs to communicate, we're right there on the Matrix. So you'll be able to come and see how it works, and then we can start looking at ways that we can work together. I'm looking at my network as a big test lab.
Okay. All right.
Sounds like we need to take a field trip down to your office and do another one of these.
The Matrix. Yeah, we need to see
Absolutely.
the Matrix, man.
Absolutely.
Behind the scenes, we need to see the Matrix, man. No, this is absolutely incredible, Antwon. It was a pleasure to meet you. It's more inspiring to hear your story, the grit, the determination, and the big vision going forward as well. So, Rick and I appreciate you, and it was an absolute pleasure today.
I do thank y'all for bringing me on, and for the audience, if you want to know more, just let me know. We just covered about 30 years worth of stuff in an hour. it's a lot, so I do understand that, but just let me know. I'm an open book.
Absolutely. Stay tuned. We might do an in-person part 2. So until next time, peace.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thanks.